current webinar series, and we're just going to basically talking about customizing the ACT program, and primarily we're going to focus on customizing the layout. And one of the great things about Sage ACT compared to almost anything else that's out there is the ability to do customization. And we take, I always, people say, well, hey, do people in my industry use ACT? And honestly, yeah, most likely there is somebody in your industry that uses ACT, but what a lot of times we don't realize is how customizable ACT is. ACT is what I call industry agnostic, and so because of that, over the years, you wouldn't believe all the different industries of people that have used ACT. We've got people that do sales and do quoting and do mortgage and do public speaking and do recruiting and do product sales and entertainment. And I had a call the other day from the Talladega Motor Speedway, and they're going to start using ACT. So, just all sorts of stuff. And so the point is, we can take ACT and wrap it around the way we do things. And I'll do some meetings with people, and, the first thing out of their mouth is, well, nobody does sales like we do, or nobody does what we do like we do it. And that's a good thing. It's awesome to have a very customized and personal sales process. But also, you'd be amazed at how well ACT can wrap its arms around the way you do business. Now, with that said, it's also important. In fact, one of the things that we'll try to do when we meet with people is kind of have a session where we talk about the way you do business, and we talk about the way that ACT works, and we try and come together, because we can't make ACT do what ACT doesn't do. But on the other hand, designed properly, the ACT program is very customizable and very suitable to almost any type of a business. Let me show you as an example our database. And then I'll go in, maybe in a minute, I'll show you another one that we've done. Hold on, I made a mistake. There it goes. So here's our database, and you'll see a lot of stuff on here that maybe you don't need, but we color code some of the fields that we use all the time. We've got some add-on programs that add some buttons to look things up. We've got a place here. Let me show you a few that I think are really special. We've got fields down here for you contacted us about. And so if somebody calls me, or if I go to do a trade show or a networking meeting, usually the sum of that conversation or the sum of that meeting is, what did we talk about? And so I had a meeting with a guy this morning, and it was just a networking meeting, and I would write, we talked about exchanging some names of people in common businesses. Or you might call and, or I might say, we talked about you sending me your resume so that I could place you with XYZ company. So something like that, the way I finished that sentence. But in doing that, what that gives us is a way to populate our letters. So, so for example, I might send a letter to somebody that says, Dear Bob, it's good to hear from you, and last time we met we talked about, and that would be that bit of information. The other fields you see in ours is the fields I've customized. For example, the company name, the person's name, the phone number, their email address. The status is kind of, where are you in our relationship, how we heard about you, referred by, product interest, is software interest. And those are things that we want to fill out on every single phone call. In fact, one of the examples I like to use is from the movie Pearl Harbor. And if you saw that movie, there was a point in time after the bombing of Pearl Harbor where one of the nurses in the movie was sent out to triage the wounded. And she's out on the runway and trying to decide who should get in to see the doctor, who's not going to make it, and who can wait a while with an aspirin. and she's got a tube of lipstick, and she's basically triaging the wounded. And a lot of times we need to triage people that contact us. We triage sales calls. We triage support calls. We triage, how we do our day. And all that means is we kind of prioritize. And when somebody does call us, we've got 2 to 5 minutes to decide, what should I do with this person? Is this somebody that it makes sense for us to work with? Is this somebody that's a good fit for us? Is this somebody that I can help? Is this somebody that we can be profitable working with? And you need to make that decision. And honestly, with most of our brains, I can remember what I talked about during that call for a week or two at the most, sometimes not that long. And then after that, if it didn't get written down or get put into act, it really didn't happen. So the rule around the office is if it's not in act, it didn't happen, because that's true after a couple of weeks. So we try to, number one, in terms of our processes, we think about in triage. If you're going to triage a wounded person on a battlefield, what are you going to look for? Well, are they bleeding? What's their temperature? What's wrong with them? How urgent is it? There's some questions that you're going to ask. If you're in a hospital, you're going to ask if they have insurance and things like that. But you need to know those things, because you need to decide, are we going to ship this guy to another hospital? Are we going to fix him here? Are we going to give him an aspirin and send him home? You have to decide those things. And so for whatever your industry, one of those first steps is to gather information and to prioritize based upon that information. And so it might be the size of the deal. It might be their salary if you're a recruiter. It might be how bad they're hurting. Whatever it is, you want to gather that information and then have a place for it to live inside of the database. So that's part of the process of how we go and wrap our business and what we do as a business process around what ACT does. So now we've got a list of things that we would ask somebody, and a list of things that we would capture in a business, and we want to go in and have a place for those things to live inside of ACT. So before you start customizing, make sure that you have that conversation with your team. What bits of information are important for us? What are we going to be doing when people call us? What do we do on every single phone call? And you can't make an ACT database, especially if you have a team of people. You can't say, hey, this is just something, use it if you feel like it. You can't do that, because it's very much garbage in, garbage out. If people aren't using the database consistently, then you're not going to get valuable information out of it. If I vary how I use it from day to day or from person to person, then the value of it is very poor. So we've been doing, I've been doing my business as it is right now for about 12 years. And I've got, over the last 12 years, I've got a pretty good database, because we always put everything in ACT. If somebody calls us, we find out, what are you here for? How do I get in touch with you? What specifically are you needing? And that goes into the program. And then later on, if I want to find everybody from a particular industry who needs to upgrade their software, I can quickly find that. We do a lot with people from mortgage, and so if I write a newsletter that's specific to people in mortgage, I can quickly find all the people in mortgage that I met at this particular trade show, and maybe I'm going to send them a newsletter that says, oh, by the way, we're going to be at this show again this year. So that's the intro part of it. I don't have a lot of PowerPoints for you today. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get in, we're going to start to customize an ACT database. And I'm just, again, going to show you just kind of the basics. In terms of customizing ACT, there's a few different things that we could customize. And I want to refer you to one thing while I'm starting this up. A lot of help, obviously we do ACT training, we do customization for people, and really the bigger the group, the more important it probably is that we help you just because we're going to make sure that what you've captured is captured consistently, that it's captured the right way. We want to make sure that you're not making people do double data entry if possible, that we're not having to do a lot of extra keystrokes if possible. So larger groups, it makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, if you just want to add a field here and there, there's no reason why you couldn't. So one of the things I would first refer you to, if you just do a Google search on how do I customize Sage Act, you will find this article right here, how to customize Sage Act. And inside of it is a lot of really good stuff. So if we're going to be talking about how to customize fields, here's how to add a field, how to manage fields. And if you want to talk about how to do the layouts and things, here's layouts. And so, for example, here's how to design a layout. And it took me to my other screen, but there's the steps we're going to talk about right now. So there is a lot. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, and there's a lot of good information on those too. Just do a Google search on how do I customize Sage Act, and you'll see a level of detail that I won't have time to go into here. But with that said, like I think I said before, there are times when a consultant or somebody that does this all the time would be helpful. And that's because designing a good database is kind of half art and half science. The science part is what you might read in the knowledge base article. How do I add a field? Well, here's the mechanics of how do I add a field. The art is the part where we decide how to model this in a way that people will use it, where it's not too complex, where the flow of it makes sense, the order of the fields makes sense, the type of the fields makes sense. And then within ACT, we can customize companies and contacts and groups and sales opportunities. And so for different, depending on how you do business, how you design that, what goes where, can have a lot to do with the functionality. So let me just kind of go over the steps. We're going to start with the contact screen. And if you think about, in this business that we're going to play with here, we're going to say, okay, we'd like to find out when somebody calls us, there's a few things I'd like to find out. I'd like to find out what industry are they in. I want to find out how did they hear about us. I might want to find out, let's see, the size of their team. And I might want to find out when their birthday is and what their favorite sport is. Instead of birthday, let's find out their anniversaries. I think birthday's already there. Okay, so those different things I'd like to start to find out. I'd like to make the fact that maybe I need to know how you heard about us a required field. And then for the favorite sport, I'm going to give them a drop down to choose from. Okay, so that'll kind of give us a few things that we want to do. Now, in customizing this, we're going to do this all at the contact level. And although we're doing it here, we can still customize the contact level, the groups level, the companies level, and the sales opportunities. All of these things have a detailed view that you can customize. Okay? Step one in doing this is to add the fields, and step two is to customize the layout. Up at the top on this one, you can see I have a drop down, and you can see there's a few different layouts already here. So here's one with CH Tech 1. There's different layouts there. And so what we're doing is we're customizing a layout. And one of the things that's important before you deliver this to people is that you want to find a way to, you have to make sure that people are aware that you've changed the layout and what they're supposed to do. So an ACT usage document is helpful in most organizations. And what that means is that here's how we do things with ACT. When we talk to somebody, whenever we've got a business touch with someone, we enter this all the time, no exceptions. And then that will flow into your layout. So first of all, to define, there's two parts that we're doing. We're going to define fields, and then we're going to add the fields to the layout. And let's just start with the one for the favorite sport. So under Tools, and define fields, and I'll tell you, you have to have people out of your database to do this. But here's tools and define fields. If people are in the database, it's going to be locked and you can't do it. In this section, you'll see the fields that are there. I'll give you a little bit of tour here. Field name, field type, whether it's linked to a company field or not. The little padlock means that that is a field that in the premium version of ACT, it can be protected. Protected means that some people can see it and some people can't. So for example, I might have a Social Security number field, and I might want to have the Social Security number field visible only to human resources and executive management. And then I might have a commission rate or something like that, and that might be hidden from the mailroom guys. It might be read only to the sales team, and it might be read and write to executive management. So those are two examples of ways you can customize field types or field level security. All right, so the other thing that's important here, let me go down and show you, for example, the field called ID status. If I go here and click on edit the field, you'll see one of these options here is called use drop-down list. So if you want a drop-down that says, for example, what types of entries should the user select from, you would see that type of thing. So let's go back, and we're going to add favorite sports team here. But because of that drop-down, I like to add my drop-downs first. So I'm going to go to Manage Drop-Downs, and I'm going to choose Create a Drop-Down List, and I'm going to call this Sports Teams. Now give it a description. Now these two boxes are important. Number one, allow the users to edit the items in the list, yes or no. And what that means is that the users could add things if you wanted them to. And the second option is automatically add items, which means as soon as you type something, it shows up in the list. Hit next, and I can choose sports teams. So I'm going to say Astros, and I'm going to hit add. And the Aggies, and I hit add. I'm sorry if you're not from Texas, I'm doing Texas teams. Rockets and Rangers. Okay, just as an example of a few. This list is alphabetized. There's not a way to change the order other than to change alphabetizing it. And now I've added that to the drop-down. So now when I click on Home, I'm back to my field definition. And now I want to add a new field called Favorite Sports Teams. Hit Create New Field. Call it Sports Teams, and see down under drop-down, if you click that, you'll see there's Sports Teams. Other fields that are here, or other entries that are here, number one is the data field type. You can choose character or currency or date time or decimal. Just a lot of different things. I would say, if you're going to play with different field types, be aware of what they do. For example, a yes/no field is a checkbox. A URL is a website. There's picture fields if you wanted to do pictures. There's phone numbers and memo fields and things like that. Again, there's a whole lot to customizing that we're not going to get into today. So I'm going to keep it simple so that I don't lose people. But just realize if you want to get really significant, there's probably, like I said, I probably could talk for a day or two on just technical things of customizing a database. So this is our basic toe in the water. So we're going to choose the field type of character. Now down below, here's our options: allow blank or don't allow blank. So allow blank means it's not required. If this is deselected, they must enter it. Generate history. This means if they change the field, a history is created that says the field was changed by this person and this type on this date. Primary field, I will skip that for now, and then drop-down list we've chosen. On the next window, limit to list means if there is a drop-down, they are forced to enter items on that list, and they can't choose something else. Allow multi-select means that they can choose more than one item. I'll show you an example of that. Show descriptions. If there is a field definition description, it will show that if you choose to have that on. And then enable type ahead. If you have a larger drop-down list and you type the first few letters, it scrolls down until it finds that item. Next one, if you want a default value, like if I want my state default to say Texas or Houston, I can do that. Field format, if you wanted to format, for example, a Social Security field, you could format in such a way that if you typed in, 10 numbers, there's hyphens after the third and seventh number. Field length is how much data. This can be up to 256 characters. And so, for example, if you're putting a state field and all the entries are only 2 characters long, you probably would trim this down to a smaller number in order to save space on your system. Usually leave this as the default. Field triggers, it's possible to make a field do something when you leave, and again, we'll skip that for now because we're keeping it simple. So now we're done. We've added this one field to the database. The field has a layout. It's called Sports Teams. So I finished that one, and if I'm done, I click OK. And the first thing, this is a recent window in the last version or two of ACT, but the first thing that pops up is a window that says, okay, you've added a field to the database. Do you want to add it to the layout? So if I say no on this, it doesn't matter. If I've added a new field, it's not there. So I need to say yes, because now I've added the field to the database. I need to add the field to the layout so that I can use it. I mean, it's like you went and bought a new set of clothes and you locked them in your closet. Everybody goes, well, that's a nice new shirt. Well, you can't see it if it's in the closet. So put it on the layout, takes it out of the closet, puts it where everybody can see it, where it can be used. So we'll say yes, we do. We can either say yes, we do want to customize the layout. I'm going to say no so I can show you something else. If I wanted to customize it, I could still get to the Customize Layout window by going to Tools and Design Layouts and Contact. And so that brought me in to where I can see it. In this view, let me show you a couple things that are important. Number one, there is a feature called the Properties window, and you can get to it by hitting the F4 key on your keyboard. And you see when I did that, it brought up this Properties window to the right. I can make this a little bit bigger. F4 is on, F4 is off. Another thing you might want to do, you say, well, hey, I can't see everything. Well, you can change the size of the layout. Instead of 618, maybe you want to say it's 715 in height, or 750, and maybe in width you want to make this to be 900. And so you can do that way. The thing with the Properties window is everything I click on has properties. So if I click on this box back here, one click, it tells me this is called New Rectangle number 3. It's got a color. If you want to change the color, you just scroll down, pick a different color, and there it changed it. I can change it from beige to aqua, and it's real easy to do that. However, when I change the field color, you see the labels didn't change. And so let me give you a little definition of terms. On the right-hand side here, this is a field. On the left-hand side, this is a label. So if I wanted to make my labels for trivia, for example, the same aqua that the background is, I would need to go to here and find aqua and change it, and you see it change the color. If you want to change the background colors for several labels, you can click on one, hold down Control on the keyboard, and kind of keep clicking away, and then change it to aqua all at once, and now they're all changed. Another thing that you might want to do is move some of the fields around. So, for example, if I want to take my favorite sports team, I want to put it right above ID status, I might want to move these around. So here's one way to do it. One click selects it. You see when I select, it puts handles around it. And when you're trying to move things around, you want to stay away from the handles, because watch what happens. If I grab a handle and move it, I've changed the size of the field, and that may not be what you want. So be careful that, and doing that brought up another thing, is there's not 100 levels of undo with the layout designer like there might be in Microsoft Word or something like that. So if you make a mistake, the best thing you can do is try Control Z, which is undo one time. But if you've really blown it up, then the best thing you can do is just exit without saving and redo what you've done. It's much better to save frequently. And if you make an error, to go back to a recently saved copy. It's much preferred to do it that way than it is to say, well, I've made a mistake, let me just go back and redo it. It's easier to just go back to what you've saved than it is to try and redo or undo a bunch of mistakes. So I'm going to, I've made this change, and I don't want to save it under the layout called Act Demo. I want to rename it, and I'm going to call it My Demo Layout. So I go to File and Save As. I call it My Demo Layout. And if I were to close this right now, close, you're not going to see it until you choose the right layout. So I go to the top here, and there's the layout I just saved called My Demo Layout. And there's the one that has the aqua background on it. Let's go back in. I want to add the field called Sports Teams right underneath Referred By. So I go to Tools, back to Design Layouts, Contact. In this case, I want to move some things up and around so I can get to it. I want to take Key Contact and move it up here. So to do that, I'm just going to watch me draw a line through it. I draw a line through it. That selects it. Now I can click and move it. This is where you have to be careful, because if it doesn't work like you'd like it to, the best thing you can do is redo it without saving. So I'm going to change the size of this. I'm going to move this around. Then I want to take these two items. I select them by drawing a line through them. And I'm just going to use the arrow keys on the keyboard to move them up a bit. See this, there's a little line, it's hard to see. To draw a line, you click on it, or draw a line through it. Now that puts handles around it. And you can go up. Now in Act, there really are not lines. What I really have is a rectangle. So if, for example, I change the size to 240 width by 10, it didn't take it. Anyway, basically what I'm trying to show you is it's not really a line, it's a rectangle. So if you drag it, you see now it says 240 by 38. The only way to put it back to a line again is to change the size to the right item. Didn't want to stick. All right, we'll keep going. I'm just going to take that off right now. Okay, if I want to add a field below this, or above here, here's what I do. I go to the field window here, and I'm going to click and drag. And then up pops a list of the fields that are not currently in a layout. So I want to go down. I want to find the one called Sports Teams. And there it is. Here's the option to add a layout, and I hit Add. And you see that brought it right in. That's one way to do it. But you see the height of this is a little bit different. In fact, if I had even changed the colors of one, let's say I want to make this field a green background, because I like to make it required for our team. And maybe I'd change the label or something, but instead I want to just copy it. So in that case, I would just select it a little bit so it puts handles around it, do a Control-C to copy, a Control-V to paste, and then just move it. And in doing that, it's already in the right size and format. Now to assign it, and you see in here the one that have fields assigned to them have the fields in the label or in the field itself. In this case, there's no field listed. What that means is that the placeholder is there, but there is not a field assigned to the placeholder. So to add a field, I just double click, and I can scroll down, and there's the one called Sports Teams. I can choose to add a label or not add a label, hit OK, and there's my field in there. So now I hit Save, and if I go back into ACT, you'll see now I've got my two colored fields. I've got my field called Sports Teams. If I hit the down arrow here, you can see there's my Cowboys, Rangers, Rockets, Aggies. Remember, I didn't choose multi-select, so you can only see one item here as compared to the ID status, which is a multi-select. So multi-select gives me the option to have more than one thing selected at once. And so that's how that works. All right, another thing I might want to do is I want to pretty it up a little bit. So let's go back to Tools. We'll go back to Design Layouts and Contact. And so here's some things I want to do. For example, this is a picture. And I didn't take the time to copy any logos or anything, but if you have a logo, you can bring that in. I'm just going to take it off of mine, and I want to move it to the bottom. Maybe I can put it on top of here. If you had a different picture under the drawing menu, under drawing, there's image. So if you wanted to add another image in here, you can go and click and drag over it. And then if it is on your computer, you can paste that in or put that in. In fact, under the properties for that, you can choose the name and the location of the image. If I want to change the background color, I can click on the background, basically with the property windows up. And that was, again, through the F4 key on the keyboard. With the property window up, everything you click on, that's what the properties are for. So if I'm clicking on this box that we made, you see it says Rectangle 3. If I click on the logo, it says Image. If I click on the background, this is the background. So if I want to change the colors of the background, I simply click, and I choose a different color. So if I want to choose Blanched Almond, there I just changed the color. Alrighty. Sometimes I like to put a box around some of them to kind of group them. So to do that, I would go back to Drawing, choose a rectangle, and draw my rectangle. There it is. Now I can change my color of it.
Maybe I want this one to be aquamarine. Well, hey, where'd the fields go? Well, it's because the order of them was such that this one's in the back or on top of them. So one thing I could do is I could go and put them on top again, but the easiest thing is just to go and right click, and here's send to back, and that sends that to the back. If you wanted to change the colors of all three of these, let me show you a trick. Number one, I click on the box behind it, I grab the handle and I make it too small. Then I draw a line through the labels. Then I go to the background color for the labels, and I pick my color. I forget what color I chose, but there's pale green. I can make that was aquamarine, but we'll make this pale green too. There we go. So now the labels are the same color as the box that I'm making, and then I just basically drag the box back over. That's an easy way to select that. So now I've got a box, and I can group things that way. And again, we want to always save frequently. Then when we're done, we go back. And there's the background, there's my boxes. It's ready to go. So that's kind of my quickie webinar on customization. Let me end it here and unmute. Number one, I'll show you how to order the fields, and then number two, how to add an additional tab. Back to Tools menu, back to Manage or Design Layouts and Contact. And both of those things are under the Edit menu. Edit menu, and here's tabs. So if I wanted to make a new tab called Customer, I'd click that, I'd give it a name, and click OK. Consequently, if I want to take off the Web Info tab, you can take that off. And so now you see here's one called Customer. To change the ordering is under Edit, under View menu, and then there's two things here. There's Tab Stops and Enter Stops. Tab Stops is the order when I press Tab, Tab, Tab through, and Enter is what happens when I press Enter, Enter, Enter. They work the same way. So if I want to show tab stops, I click that, and now you see a list of the order. If I want to take one off, I can select it and turn it off. If I want to clear these, I can go back to tab stops and clear them. And now I can go back to tab stops, and you see they're not there. If I want to define them, I just click the order that I'd like to click through things. And if I want to skip one when I hit tab, I just don't record it. So I'll skip fax phone. I just kind of click through. Maybe if I want to hit these two, and then I want to hit the trivia, then I want to come back and hit city, state, zip. You know, whatever you want with that. When I'm done, turn off show tab stops, hit the save button, and now when I go back, let's say I get a brand new contact and I want to start typing. Press tab, press tab, press tab. See it skipped title. It went from address 1, address 2 right over to trivia. So that's how you define that. And then shift tab goes backwards. And adding enter would do the same thing. Report. Here's how we customize a report. So we're going to add the sports team field to the contact report. Report menu. Here's the contact report. And let me just run it for somebody without. So let me go back and find Melissa. And so there's Melissa Weather. When I go run report menu, here's the contact report for the current contact. So when you see here's the contact fields, there's some status fields, some user fields, home address fields, but there's not sports teams. So let me show you how to do that. We go to the report menu, down to edit template. We find the one called contact report. And I just would say be careful here, because if you make a mistake, it's good to go to you can go to a backup or make a copy. So first thing I'll do before I make any changes, I'm going to save this under a different name. So file menu, save as. I call this my contact report. So if I break it, then I can fix it. Now where'd it go? Report, edit template. There it is. Okay, so all I want to do is I want to add a field, and I guess I would say be careful. There's a lot to this. Like, for example, in this one, there's sub-reports that bring up secondary contacts and notes and things like that. I'm not going to get into too much of that. All I'm going to show you here is how to add a field. So we go to field. I'm just going to basically go right below the created on, make space for it, and you see up pops a list of my fields. I'm going to go down until I find sports teams. There it is. I hit add and close. So if you go in and add a whole bunch of other fields there, you'll need to go back and make enough room and customize that area for that. I'll just hit save. Now when I'm ready to run it, I go to report. Let's give her a sports team first. Save that record. Now we go to reports, other contact reports. There's my contact report that I named. We do the current contact. And let's see if it lists, there's your sports team, Astros. Right here. You notice I didn't take the time to make the fields, the formatting the same, so she's got a little bit of different format for the sports teams, so that's something you want to pay attention to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.